Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Hello, good morning and a very warm welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And my guest this morning is Mr. Ray Abewardena, the Managing Director of Equity Partners, a joint venture between DFCC and HNB, the senior financial man, probably very appropriate in this ambience of financial challenges. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for being in our program.
My pleasure.
Ray, I meant to ask you, and I'm glad you're here. We had a stock market that was zooming along and sort of soaring upwards, straight up like that, around the 8,000 mark at one point. And various things have happened, and now I noticed that it's sort of reached a kind of level which it's around the 6,000, 6.4 yesterday. Is that about the right level? Is there a right level?
Yeah, I think you need to look at it you need to go back maybe about a year or little beyond that to see where the market is now as against where it was about a year back. So we have seen a series of events, both locally and internationally, that have contributed to what the market is today. We have seen a lot of outflows. We have seen serious devaluations of currencies. We have seen that how the European markets and how Europe on the whole is faring. We know how Asian markets have been faring. So I think one needs to look at it from a more holistic basis nature than sort of singularly listing out or singularly identifying our market. So if you look at it from that perspective, I think we also have got caught in Sri Lanka is not sort of secluded from what's happening from a global perspective. So the markets has been, as you very rightly said, I mean, we were about 7,200 at the end of 2014, and currently we are at a 6,434 as of a couple of days ago. So you can see that there has been a downturn of the market. But what we have seen more is that the market dipped quite significantly in the first quarter, in the first 2 months of this year. Interest rates have risen, the rupee has got depreciated. So it's a culmination of a lot of events that have sort of that have contributed to what the market is today.
And is there a lot of what is the level of foreign interest in our market then?
See, we had inflows of about very strong inflows in 2014. We saw there were outflows in 2015 and in 2016. Not significant, but I think what we are seeing is it's again as a result of what global markets are going through, where I feel that it's the foreign fund managers are selling off from countries where they still can make some money and exiting these markets. The other factor for us is that there was a rate hike in the US, and I see and I read that there's lots of money that's going back into those markets as well. So people are moving away from equity into interest into the debt market globally. So it's again a factor, a more holistic as a result of macroeconomic factors that have affected.
And how appealing is Sri Lanka in terms of foreign investment? Do you have people? How appealing is for an investor looking at opportunity Sri Lanka?
For us, a foreign investor has a basket of countries to select from. So you're competing globally. You need to position yourself within a certain gamut of countries which will fall into a certain investable bracket. And in such a scenario, a fund manager, a foreign fund manager will first take a top-down effect. He will look at the macroeconomic factors to see the stability of those, including political stability and the currency, interest rates, and once those fall into within a satisfactory level, then what happens is then they start looking at the individual companies. And as you know, our market's been small. Liquidity has been one of our constraints over the last decade, 2 decades that the market has been open. We opened up the market in 1990 to foreigners, so we haven't seen a significant growth in market liquidity. We are still about 27.5% of GDP, where more developed markets are much higher in comparison. So one needs to look at how we could increase liquidity in the market and how we could make the positioning or the offering larger that will attract foreign investors into the market.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that slight interruption there. Now, Ray, the stock market for in times such as this, where interest rates are high and so on, is it a good investment for whom? What type of retail investor?
Good question, Faz, because I feel, unless the market is at a very low level or that there are other factors that supersede market which will have a very adverse impact on the market. Barring such circumstances, I feel that market always has good value. It is, and to answer your question sort of in a very straight point blank manner, it is for the discerning investor. It is for the investor who has the holding power, the ability to discern between what is a speculative stock and what is a fundamentally strong stock. An investor who is there, who's not getting into the market today you need that kind of investor as well. You get the day trader, you get the speculator, you get the but you need, by and large, what is needed is like the portfolio kind of investor who will look at a long-term return. And if you were to analyze the returns that a market would give over a 5 to 10 year horizon, it always gives you a higher rate than what an interest rate would give you.
I see. But you really need to be able to, as you say, discern between this stock and that. And
that is imperative. That is imperative. So you need to be backed by good research. You need to know the companies. You need to know at what values they are trading at. You need to know what the story is. If one was to take cognizance of those aspects, there is, and if you time it right, you can always make money out of it.
Right. And you're on the board of the stock exchange, aren't you? So, are there many day traders?
It's again a sign of the times for us. When the market starts picking up, you'll have more of them come into the market.
Right.
You'll see those numbers winning when the markets come down, or as you said that the market starts ambling along. There isn't much opportunity for such like to come in to make. So it is. It's actually it's a sign of the market conditions.
And how are these? Are these measures that were taken in the past, like separating the credit factor, where you can get credit from your broker, but now it's separated into a separate company? How is that? How are all those changes
I think
going?
Separation for us, I think it is good in that you create a separate entity, a separate silo, through which that lending operation could be done, where you don't mix it. Having said that, brokers are still permitted to lend, but within a certain, it is a multiple of what their net capital is. I mean, they can't lend extensively.
Right.
So there is some control. So those are good. Those are good regulatory policies that are being brought in to ensure that brokers don't overlend and find themselves in difficulties in times when the markets sort of start taking a turn southward. But so margin trading is a specialized line of business which is conducted by finance companies, which is by banks and financial institutions who are licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission to be able to provide margin trading.
And how widespread is this ownership? When you look at your database of where people live, how is it mainly significantly, and how much so in Colombo?
It's highly concentrated for us.
Is it?
Yeah, that's one problem that we've been faced with. I mean, we still haven't got into something like a UTI of India where you can have a fund that will broad-based ownership and have a large number of people who have invested in the market. We don't have that. There have been great efforts. There have been many ventures into the outstations to attract investors into the market to look at broad-basing this thing. But still, we have not been able to
And whose job or whose responsibility is the promotion of the stock exchange?
It happens as a joint venture. Those are between the broking community and the stock exchange.
Right.
So, I mean, it still continues. I mean, you have some broking firms which have branches out out of Colombo, in the main cities outside Colombo. The stock exchange continues its market development. They do seminars, they conduct, they do presentations. So there is a lot. I mean, it continues, but still, it again is you need to link. It's correlated to the market conditions.
Yeah, and what about compliance and so on? Do you have officers who are constantly on the ball?
Yes. Each broking firm has to have its own compliance officer, who is responsible, who reports to the board.
Right.
So I think the regulatory framework that has been enacted for our market is pretty fine.
And your database. I'm just trying to find out what the sort of interest level is. Now your database is available for anyone to sign up and get information. When you look at that, do you find many sign-ups from out of the concentrated area of Colombo? Maybe in Gaul and Matra, Trinco, Batiklo. Do you have people who are signing up?
We offer something for us. I think most brokers do now. We offer online trading facilities. So I wouldn't say many, but I would say, I mean, in the main, like Kandy, Matra, Gaul. I know an area that has been targeted is Negombo, because there's a big business community out there, so people are trying to develop those things as well. Kurnagal and Damula was once cited as possible places to attract investors in. So we do have investors who would trade from online, but it's not a large number for us.
It's not as much as you'd
I would like to see. I think as a market we would like to see a much greater amount.
And can you explain to us what the role of the SEC is in terms of promotion? Do they have a role to play as well?
Yes. The SEC gets involved in giving the investor the confidence of what the regulatory framework is, what the safeguards are, what their role is. And we have seen now, whenever we do presentations, mostly outside, we have a participant from like the Director General or the Chairman of the SEC who would also make a presentation at the forum to tell investors as to the regulatory framework that we have, because we have a very strong and very steady regulatory framework.
Indeed. We'll take a short commercial break now and come right back and discuss further aspects of the capital market. Stay tuned to Newsline.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Welcome back and good morning again. This is Newsline, and my guest this morning is Mr. Ray Abeyewardene, Managing Director of Equity Partners. Ray, capital market, very an important institution to attract money, to bring in money for various developments and so on. In that context, and also when a company is listed, of course, it's very it becomes quite transparent. So I was wondering why, or what would preclude them, or is this a bad idea? Give me your take on the proposition that concerns Sri Lankan Airlines. I see that the Prime Minister and so on saying that it's steeped in debt, and now they're looking for a partner to manage the airline and so on. Why can't they perhaps do that, get a partner, because they clearly can't. There's no way of getting out of this hole. Keep a small stake for the people, and why can't they list the company? Wouldn't a listing bring transparency and so on?
Good question. I mean, I would like to ask you the same question as to why can't they do exactly what you're saying. And I hope that will be the way forward. I mean,
you all do listings as well.
Yes, we do.
So if the government was your client, how easy would you be able to list Sri Lankan Airlines?
Now that the debt has been taken out, now that the government has absorbed the debt component and made it debt-free, I think it's a very fine proposition, and I'm sure it will be a large IPO, which will require a lot of foreign participation as well. And as you said, I think the first step would be to get a strategic investor who knows the business, try to depoliticize this as much as possible, run it independently, and then not only Sri Lankan Airlines, Faraz, I think there are other institutions as well, state institutions as well, where merely by putting 10 or 20% stakes into the market, you don't lose control.
No.
You keep the control. And I think that you do, as you said, the transparency, you bring in a more dynamism into the business, good governance, lots of other good things that follow when you become a listed entity.
I think the indications are from what we read and analyze from what the Prime Minister and his team are saying, that they are after a sort of a Temasek model, where it's a big thing and it's listed, part of it is listed, and that way you have the transparency and the professionals running it, and the government can sit back and say, well, we've got nothing to do with that now.
Which is one way of going about it, Faraz. You could create a holding company, transfer these assets into that, and then list that as an entity, or you could look at listing the individual entities. So I think it's two models, and both work.
Right. It's just that even if you took the largest of our companies, I think it's John Keel's heading the list there. But where would they fit in terms of, let's say, the Bombay Exchange?
I mean, in terms of size?
Yes.
It's very small.
Very small. Should be very small.
Very small. I mean, I think Bombay would be an unfair comparison to our markets, because those are very
well, where would be a better?
We are still in those, we are still a growing market in that.
Where would we
context? I mean, you look at markets. I mean, I think even places like Malaysia, and it's difficult to put Sri Lanka in our market into a specific slot in that context. But we are an emerging market. We are a frontier market, so we fall into that camp. But to get back to what I said to you at the outset, if we are to increase liquidity, create more awareness, get a larger sort of attraction, we need to increase the size of the market, and attracting good state institutions to list 10 to 15% of their holdings on the market, I think is an excellent way of being able to. I mean, the government gets revenue as well. Then the factors that we spoke of, like the good governance and less political interference, and you get top management to run the businesses, as well as you increase market liquidity.
Indeed. I was just going back, and a viewer is asking us what happened to British Airways under Maggie and its current position. If we were to just sort of look at Sri Lankan Airlines, I remember that the Concorde operation was part of British Airways, but the government then took the Concorde operation out, and they wrote off the money that they invested in the development of that aircraft. It then became very profitable for British Airways, but that if they were saddled with the capital expended on there, it would never have been.
Because I mean, as the Honourable Prime Minister said, the airline is steeped in debt.
That's right.
And if one was to continue to service that debt, the airline's not going to take a turnaround like
That's right.
for decades, right?
Yeah.
So I think they did the prudent thing.
Yeah.
Nor is it attractive, because when it's so steeped in debt, nobody's going to be interested in coming in as a strategic partner or strategic investor. So I think similar lines on what you speak of, that they've taken the debt out, made it debt free, and now you're positioning it in a right place to attract investors. I think you need to probably get a good strategic foreign partner to come in to drive the management side of it, and then on the equity side you list a percentage of it on the market.
Because even though the French and the British governments spent so much of money on the development of that aircraft, it never was bought by any other airline in the world.
It died a natural death.
Well, it was only operated by Air France and by British Airways, and it had a good run. But the British or the French were unable to offer this to the Gulf countries, the Middle Eastern countries, who were on a buying spree and developing their own aircraft, their own airlines. So at the time it was as controversial perhaps as this right-off now.
But there you have to look at it for us from a business decision vis-a-vis a politically influenced decision.
Yeah.
I mean, in businesses, I think there are so many these things where even large, big, reputed organizations get into ventures where they feel, where they probably don't succeed.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the process. That's a part of the business. So it's the reason for that failure cannot be directly attributed to any political influence, or the whims and fancies of any political head or somebody who wants to come and do something differently. Those could be then probably be deemed as business decisions that have gone awry.
I want to also ask you this, Ray. Now, in the past, I think what I'm going to ask you about is sentiment. How is sentiment now? There was a lot of super sentiment, euphoria, as the war was coming to an end. And the smarter people recognized that, saw it coming, and made their moves, only to reap the benefits soon after the war actually finished. So, where do we stand sentiment-wise?
The market has cycles for us, it's very difficult for somebody to say the market's going to go up for these particular reasons, because I've always said and felt that the market has a mind of its own. The market starts moving up or down when you least expect it to. So it's a very cyclical market. Most markets are. But to answer your question in terms of sentiment, it's again, you need to have holistic factors that will contribute. I mean, as you said, the euphoria that came about once the war ended, the expectations were high. People knew that the market, a country and a market that was sort of down, I wouldn't say in the doldrums, but that was sort of ambling along for a good 20-25 years. Suddenly, opportunities opened up, and so there was a lot of euphoria, and there's a lot of the sentiment is very high. If you were to reflect, or if you were to compare it to what it's now, I think it's a sort of a more stable sense of sentiment now than the euphoric expectations of when the war ended.
And what do we? I ask this. Let me put it this way to you, Ray. How many Nick Leesons are there in this market?
I mean, I can't.
You can't reveal the figure.
I mean, you can't quantify and say that it's 5
but
or 10.
are there? Do you detect signs of a potential Nick Leeson anywhere?
My answer is no. My answer is no. And I mean, I know that. I think you're probably getting to what the sort of investigations and the accusations of manipulation and things like that. But now that's again up to the regulators. For us, they're looking into these things and stuff like that.
Right.
So I mean, nobody, you can't call somebody a Nick Leeson unless he's actually been proved guilty. And so far there hasn't been any indictments on anybody.
I don't know if I think we have time. There's a long question from one of our regular viewers. If you see Sri Lankan Airlines, even at the inception as Air Lanka, the capital contributed by the government was zero. The contribution was only providing debt instead of debt. Shouldn't the government amalgamate all these state-owned enterprises in the form like Temasek in Singapore?
That's the same question you asked me. I think it makes sense. It makes sense. So I don't know what the nuances are. I don't. I mean, since you're asking me, my intuitive thinking would be it makes sense. You create one large entity. You create a holding company. You have good business leaders, proven business leaders who will form the board of those companies. And you transfer these assets into that. And you issue shares in lieu of the transfer of the ownership, right? So then that entity, like a Temasek, is entrusted with running these organizations. So it becomes a holding company, much like a John Keel's Holdings,
right?
Much like a holding company, and then you have the subsidiaries. So that's what probably your viewer is alluding to.
And we'll have, as we come to the end of our morning program, we'll have to say that the Prime Minister will have to sort out the ideological differences between what may then be perceived as selling the family silver on the one side, which is actually not. He's not selling it all.
This is the misconception we have for us. Merely because it doesn't confine itself to government entities. There is this conception where even family-owned businesses feel when we list 10 or 15 or 20%, we give it away. It's not necessarily so, because you hold, as long as you have over 50%, you have majority shareholding, you have majority board representation, so you control it.
Indeed.
So it doesn't mean actually that you're giving that is a misnomer that has to be corrected, and I think the political sensitivity comes as a result of those those wrong conceptions.
Ray Abhiwardene, it's been wonderful having you on the program.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for watching Newsline. We'll wish you a great day ahead. Take care and God bless.